Oh boy, this one's gonna be a doozy. Season 3s in Fortnite are always a very interesting time. It's sort of like the middle of a chapter and no one can make up their mind whether the chapter is trash or is really good. Or maybe it's like everyone has made up their mind, but it's half and half on people that think it's good and people that think it's bad, so there's a lot of conflict going on. What often seems to be the case is the people that are better at the game, like the pros and the longtime fans, really hate the third seasons, but the casuals always seem to love it with all the chaos and just random stuff that happens. It literally is a season 3 curse if you think about it. I don't know why summer seasons always have to be bad, like the last good one we had was in chapter 2, which was 4 years ago. But anyway, enough about that. I'm here to review Fortnite chapter 5 season 3, and I guess you're here to listen to me review it, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. If you're new to how I do this, essentially I'm going to run through every single new item or POI or mechanic that was added during Season 3 and just sort of review them on a tier list and compare them to each other, see what was good, see what was bad, and how it kind of compares to previous Fortnite seasons. With that all being said, our first item on this list is going to be the new POI, Brutal Beachhead. This POI was exciting off the start because everyone thought it was going to be like the shark. I mean, it kind of has like a pretty similar design, except it's like a ship run aground instead of whatever the shark was, just a rock, like a secret base, a rock, I don't know. The layout of it is like kind of confusing. It's got a bunch of layers, there's a bunch of holes in random spots, there's a bunch of cars everywhere, which is a really fun time. And it's got Megalodon there, and he has the mythic Nitro Fist, as well as his infinite Nitro Medallion, which we'll talk about that stuff later, but it is definitely the only reason that people are landing at this POI, because otherwise it's kind of bad. There's absolutely no mats, there's not really too much loot. So if there wasn't a boss here with the mythic, it would just be dead, which is kind of just the life story of every single Chapter 5 POI that's had a medallion. Next season, if this stays in, I guarantee it's going to be a dead POI because it's really just not that good without that. But factoring in that it does have the Infinite Nitro Medallion this season, I would say it's not a terrible POI by any means. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the decent tier. I think that's probably the best spot for it. Since this pattern is repeated every single season of Chapter 5, where the POIs start amazing and then just drop off heavy when the medallion is gone, I'm gonna go ahead and look into the future a little bit and say that this is gonna be a decent POI, if we factor in how it's gonna drop next season as well. Nitrodrome is kind of in the same boat. It's probably a little bit better than Brutal Beachhead, but it's just so chaotic, man. I swear every time I walk in this dome, I get shot from like 2 different directions, and there's 2 cars running on me with grenade launchers, and it's just chaotic, which I think it's kind of supposed to be because it's like a monster truck arena type thing. But I really don't like it that much. The infinite ammo medallion is really not that good unless you're some kind of crossbow spamming freak. So I'm gonna put this in decent as well. Just I don't really like this POI. I don't really drop there. The mythic crossbow I don't really use. The ammo is never really needed, especially in pubs. So decent's where it's gonna go. The final new POI is Redline Rig. This one, of course, is home to Machinist, who has her Mythic Combat Assault Rifle and her medallion. And it kind of is the same to the last 2 POIs. I mean, like, I think it's probably the best out of these 3 POIs. Like, I land here the most, but I'd be lying if I said that wasn't mainly because of the medallion. Whenever the medallion people are like roaming and they're not at the POI, I would never in a million years ever land at that POI. So I guess when I'm saying I like it the most, I'm really saying I like the medallion in the AR the most out of all the mythics. So yeah, I'm gonna put this one in the decent as well because all the POIs are just kind of mid, and if they didn't have a medallion, no one would be dropping there. That's kind of just the story of all Chapter 5 POIs though. We're a long ways away from the Pleasant Parks and the Misty Meadows of the world, so Fortnite in 2024, essentially. Next up are the vehicle mods, which is probably the most controversial aspect of this season. They were very broken off the start, like the bulletproof tires combined with the grenade launcher and the machine gun when they were in their original state, like it was just ridiculous, man. Everyone kind of says the grenade launcher is worse than the machine gun, but I have to hard disagree with that, especially after the nerfs. All they did to the grenade launcher was like nerf the structure damage and the player damage a little bit. Whereas with the machine gun turret, they pretty much made that thing useless. Like it's so inaccurate now that you're basically just tracing outlines around people. So I would say these are kind of in a weird spot. Like they were incredible when they first started and they're still annoying now, but they're just not, I don't know. I don't really think they're super good for the game. Like it's a cool idea, but in execution, they were kind of just not super great. And the whole idea of like driving around the boxes to pick stuff up, I don't really like that. I kind of liked it the way it was before, where you would like have to throw your cow catcher on. I kind of think that was more intuitive and not just like broken, as you can just drive over a box and get like this god upgrade. It definitely makes it more simple, but it's kind of less intuitive and just kind of weird. I'm gonna put these in decent as well because I don't think they're bad or anything, but I don't really think they're anything higher than the decent tier. They're fine to have in the game, but they're kind of just excessive and a little broken, and the way to get them is kind of too easy. If they were like a little more balanced, I think the great tier would be a good spot for them, but in their current state, they're kind of just decent. Some of them are like borderline useless, and some of them are borderline overpowered, so it's like this weird mix of stuff. So I'm just gonna plop it right in the middle for now. The war bus is technically new this season, although I feel like it's kind of just the armored battle bus, but it has like different spray paint on it, and it also plays copyright music. Forgive me if I'm forgetting something, but I'm pretty sure that's just the exact same. Maybe you can like mod this one, maybe that's why it's different or something, but I honestly kind of really like the bus. I think it's super funny to drive at people in this thing, and just like the amount of fear that ensues whenever a bus shows up is just crazy. That's gotta be the best pirate I've ever seen. Oh my god, he sees us! Oh god! Not many people use them because it's kind of slow and it sort of gets stuck in a bunch of weird ways because it's such a long vehicle. But personally, I like the bus. I think it's cool. Unfortunately, I'm struggling to put it in the great tier here, and I don't want to just put everything in decent, but it's kind of a decent item as well. Like, it's not overpowered and it's not bad. Like, it's really very mediocre, and the decent tier is a really good spot for it. I promise I'm just not putting everything in the middle because I'm indecisive. And trust me, we've got some non-decent things coming up here. Megalodon's car, Megalodon's behemoth, I think is the actual name, but yeah, this is the mythic car with the grenade launcher on top. I hate this thing. This is the worst thing that has ever been created. I want to end my suffering every single time this drives up on my screen and destroys me in half a second. Like, I don't know who was out there saying that the other mythic cars were better than this one because they had the machine gun. The grenade launcher is busted, bro. Like, oh my, this car has so much health. It's got like at least 600 to 1,000 more than the other two cars, which is stupid. It is so tanky, man. It is ridiculous. It's got 4 seats, and I swear every time someone pulls up in this thing, they've got it loaded up with like hireable NPCs, and they'll just spray at you. The grenade launcher can shoot super fast and just destroy your health bar. They can boost straight through all your builds and hit you for like 150 damage, which is super dope. I don't know if you guys have like an unsimilar experience where you don't really mind this car or something, but if you haven't seen that video where we literally dropped a 30 bomb pretty much only in this car, go watch that and you'll figure out that this thing is kind of broken. And by kind of, I mean a lot. This is probably one of the most deserving items to go in the S tier, but I'm actually gonna put it in this bottom Y tier that I created for this list. I think it's kind of the most fitting for something to go in a category that's just called Y, because why would you do this to me, Fortnite? This thing has killed me borderline more times than other people. It is just, God, I hate this car, bro. All right, well, I got a little worked up there, but we're on to the next mythic car, which is the machine gun one. The machinist car and the Ringmaster Scars car, I don't even know their names at all, but they're pretty much the same. I think the car at the Nitrodrome has 4 seats instead of the 2 that the Machinist has, but I'm kind of ranking them as the same thing here because they're functionally like the same exact car. They might have a little bit different health, but they have the same mod on top, which kind of makes it the same. These cars kind of suck now that the machine gun is kind of useless and super inaccurate. It's a lot better just running people over and just for mobility than it is like shooting with the turret. It's kind of more useful to just pop out of the car with the mythic AR or just another gun and spray people because the machine gun turret is really not that good anymore. I think I'm gonna put it into the great tier. It's definitely like a great item to get around. It has a good amount of more health than the other cars in the game, so it's definitely not bad or anything, but the machine gun is pretty useless. That sits on top of it. Nitro fists are up next, and this has got to be probably my most hated thing of the season outside of the mythic grenade car. I don't mind them so much now, but when the season started, these things were so freaking broken, bro. I don't know how any of this stuff gets past testing. Like, they were one-shotting wood walls pretty much. People were just going in. You could dash and just go straight through into someone's box and they had no idea that you were coming. Not to mention these things do like 50 per punch, which is crazy because that's a 4-shot kill and you're just in their face like bang, bang, bang. And it's like, they can't do anything about that. I'm not a zero build player, but I can imagine these were probably worse than zero builds because you literally could do nothing to protect yourself against them aside from like shockwaving away away maybe. The mobility aspect of them, I don't really mind. I think it's kind of nice. It's a little bit overpowered, honestly, but I kind of think it's fine now. The fists aren't nearly as good for killing people anymore, but a lot of people will still kind of go for it, which is interesting to say the least. The uppercut is probably the most effective way of hitting people now because it'll like weirdly go through builds sometimes and like it sends people flying as well for some reason. These bad boys are definitely going in the S tier. They're really good for mobility and they're like finally a good mobility item that's also not terrible at killing people, which seems to be a struggle for this game when you think of things like the grapple blade and the kinetic blade, where they were really good mobility, but they kind of sucked for killing people even though they had like an option to kill people. So I don't know. I guess they're learning from their mistakes. Moving into some of our weapons here, we've got the Boom Bolt. This is pretty much like the OG crossbow crossed with the OG boom bow. I guess that's kind of a good way to think about it. Basically it uses rocket ammo, has like 5 shots in the mag. You shoot it, it will stick to whatever you shoot to and it blows up. Kind of like the crossbow from like Black Ops 2, I guess, if you want to think about it like that. This thing really isn't amazing. It's only good when you pair it with that mythic ammo medallion and you can just spray the absolute hell out of people and be the most annoying person to ever cross the face of Fortnite. Which, by the way, if you do that, I hate you. Like, just right off the bat, I'm gonna keep it up front with you, bro. I don't like you. That is like one of the most annoying things is just to spam people with that. And the fact that you can have infinite ammo and just shoot forever is just like, why? Epic Games like really had a grudge against the build players this season, like with the fists, the cars, and the boom bolt. Like maybe zero build really is the superior mode. But outside of having the mythic crossbow and the infinite ammo medallion, this thing isn't like amazing. So I'll put it into the great tier just because it's a pretty good weapon all around. But if you're not using the mythic one, then it's kind of like, why are you using it? Because you can only shoot it like 12 times if you don't have the medallion. So kind of an interesting way to balance it. The combat assault rifle made a return this season with the ability to put on weapon attachments, and honestly, it kind of made it more broken than it was when it was originally in the game. Now you can put all these recoil attachments on it that'll make it a lot less punishing, and you can also put a sight for, you know, even better accuracy. And if you've ever picked up the mythic one of these, you know it just absolutely shreds people. And I mean, even the gray one with the right attachments can shred people. Like, it's kind of just a crazy gun. It was kind of funny how, like, in the first few weeks of the season, the TAC AR, like, kind of had a niche because the only other AR was, like, the Warforged, which is kind of not that good. The tactical AR was, like, actually kind of hidden, and then they brought this thing in and it made it completely useless again. So that's fun. This thing is like pretty broken. I would say it's an S tier item, but it kind of depends on the attachments because I mean, like, if you don't have any attachments on it, it's just kind of a great tier gun. Like, it can definitely still shred if you're good at controlling the recoil and everything. Once you put attachments on it, it becomes an S tier item. So I'm kind of like struggling a bit on where to put this. I think I'll pop in the S tier just because if we're considering the mythic one that comes with all the attachments, it's just broken. It's a pretty broken gun. The combat shotgun also made a return this season with mods, and I don't really know how to feel about this one. I never really liked the combat shotgun that much anyway. Like in chapter 1 when it was broken, it was like fine, I guess, but then it came back in chapter 2 and it was heavily nerfed and it just hasn't really been the same since then. It's been back a couple times, they buffed the damage a little bit, but it really just hasn't ever seen its former glory. And even with the mods on it now, like the mods don't really do much for this gun, I'm gonna be honest. That might just be because I never really use it, which also means I never mod it. I just don't really feel like the attachments benefit this gun that much at all. Initially I thought a sight on it might be kind of cool because it's like a ranged shotgun, but sights on shotguns just don't ever do it. They're not worth it. I know this gun isn't really that bad, but personally, I just don't really like it. And factoring in the mythic one, which is like pretty good, I think this is pretty great tier item, so I'm gonna put it in the great tier. Next, we've got the heavy impact sniper rifle, which was the grand return of snipers, and this thing is actually pretty sick. It has this really weird effect where when you shoot a vehicle, it'll like kind of launch it, which I wish did better on the grenade launcher card because that thing is like a rock when you shoot it. It just doesn't really move. And outside of the niche where it like destroys cars super well, it also does a ton of player damage. Like, it does more damage than I think the heavy sniper does right now. It does have like insane bullet drop, which is kind of the only thing preventing this from being another Reaper sniper rifle. It also only has one in the mag, which I think all snipers should. I don't know why any outside of like the semi-auto sniper has more than one in the mag. Like, that just should not be how it is. You can't put any mods on it, which is kind of interesting. I mean, I understand some of them, but I feel like you should be able to customize the sight on it. Like, I feel like there's nothing wrong with that. Either way, it's a really good gun. Once you get good at mastering that bullet drop, it can be pretty devastating, especially with the one-shot headshot. I'm also going to put this one in the S tier because it's also just such a good counter against cars, and it's a really fun gun to use. It has like a sick reload animation too. I'm a big fan of this gun. I would say it's like a balanced version of the Reaper sniper rifle, but it's still very good. And being the only thing in the game that can one-shot headshot, it's kind of like the best ranged gun in the game in a lot of situations. Next is a tri-beam laser rifle, which is kind of a weird gun. It's like a Fallout crossover, I think, but basically it shoots like lasers that are pretty much 100% accurate. It does like 40 damage to players, and it does quite a bit more damage to cars. Another car countering item, which is always a good thing in Fortnite car season. Personally, I've never really played any of the Fallout games, so it doesn't mean that much to me that it's a collab item. I didn't really like it off the rip because I didn't think it was that good, but I've been using it a little bit recently, and it's definitely got some merit to it. You know, it shoots a little bit before you have to recharge it, like it overheats, and it doesn't use ammo, which is kind of cool. Not my favorite gun ever, but it definitely has a cool spot in the game with all the cars running rampant. I'm gonna put this in the decent tier. I don't think it's like an insane gun or anything. Like, you're probably better off just using like a combat assault rifle or a burst SMG or something, but if you do pick this up, it'll be a nice counter to cars, so it's definitely not useless or anything. Alright, this may be my like hot take for this tier list here, but the towhook cannon is one of the best guns in the game. You may be thinking I'm talking crazy, and most of you probably are because I never see like anyone really using this gun. It has like the cool mechanic where you can tow behind a vehicle and spray them, which is honestly really sick, and it's kind of been underutilized this season. Like, I don't see anybody doing it. But aside from that, this thing is a guaranteed 100 damage no matter what range you're at. So before the impact sniper came out, this thing was pretty much the sniper of this season, and it's like actually good. If you can figure out how to lead this thing, hitting those hundreds is crazy. Not to mention it also has the funny side effect of where it's like similar to the flint knock, where when you hit someone, it'll shoot them backwards. On more than one occasion, I've shot someone with this thing and they've flown backwards like off their builds or off a hill and died to fall damage. Like, this gun is hilarious. I love this thing. But yeah, as far as this being my hot take, I'm going to put this into the S tier just because I think it's a crazy gun. It's completely underutilized by pretty much everyone because no one uses this thing. There's like a week or so left of the season. Use this gun while you can because it's probably getting vaulted, and it's sick, it's a ton of fun, and it's actually really good. Next is the Machinist's Medallion, which will heal you over time similar to like the Season 1 medallions, except it only goes to a max of 75. It also heals you quite fast, and I believe even if you're taking white damage from like Storm and stuff, it'll still heal you, which I think the other medallions didn't. I kind of don't remember. It was kind of a long time ago. This is obviously not as good as like Day 1 Season 1 medallions, where just one medallion will heal you to 100. That was just busted. This is kind of like a more balanced version of all those medallions, and I really like it. It's probably my personal favorite, and it could be argued that it's the best medallion this season as well. Just the automatic healing is crazy good. Like, you can just box up for a little bit and then be back to 75 shield in like 15 or 20 seconds. Definitely an S tier medallion. Like, you're never gonna not want to pick this up, and it's super good for duos and stuff because you can like split it between both of you and have you both just refueling shield all the time. Like, really good and overpowered medallion for sure. The Nitro medallion is kind of in the same boat. Infinite mobility. You can literally sprint forever. You will never take any fall damage. You can jump higher, and you can run straight through builds. That's kind of all I need to say to put this in S tier, but yeah, this is an S tier medallion, absolutely. The infinite ammo medallion is a bit different. It's kind of like the Ares medallion from last season where it gives you like a damage boost, except it also gives you infinite ammo. The thing is, that still doesn't really make it that good. Infinite ammo is only really useful for the crossbow, like I said earlier, and it's really only useful in pubs as well because I don't think the crossbow is in competitive playlists. It's definitely nice to have. Like, you can spray forever theoretically if you're in like a comp match, and sometimes ammo can be a problem there, so I can see it being useful there, but outside of like tournaments and stuff, it's not really that impressive. I'll pick it up if I find it, but I mean, like, just doesn't really change my game at all. So I'm gonna put this one in the decent. Like, it's just an okay medallion. It's not really super impressive. It's like the Ares medallion from last season, but just a little bit better in my opinion. Nitro splashes are pretty much just the Nitro medallion, except you have to manually pop them and you can share them with your teammate. Nitro as a mechanic is kind of just busted in itself, like just being able to sprint super fast, sprint forever, jump as much as you want. Like, it's just all around kind of a cooked thing. Since obviously it does run out, it's not like infinite unlimited Nitro. I'm gonna put this one in the great tier instead of the S tier, but Nitro in itself is like an S tier overpowered mechanic, so make of that what you will. Nuka-Cola is pretty much like the ancestor to Chapter 4 Slurp Juice. It's not nearly as broken or anything. It gives you 25 health instantly and then 75 shield over time, so a little bit less powerful than that old Slurp Juice, but it's still very good. I'm gonna put this into the great tier. It's not like an S tier broken med or anything, but it's definitely still really good. The Magneto Power. I haven't used this too much, but I know it's actually like not terrible, which is kind of surprising for like a Marvel mythic like this. Like I know there's been broken ones in the past, but in particular when they add like a one-off mythic item for a season, it's never really that useful. And I mean, this one is still kind of like that, but you'll actually run into people using this one quite a bit. It's a pretty good counter to cars. You can like do this fly thing where you like launch stuff at people and it does 90 damage, which is pretty good. You can also like make a shield, and maybe that's good for 0 build players, but for a build it doesn't really matter. I think this thing is pretty decent. It's not like broken or anything, and it's not terrible. It's just a pretty mid-range mythic item, so decent's a pretty good spot for it, I think. Ride the Lightning was an interesting item. It was only in the game for like a couple weeks, but it was essentially a Metallica collab, and this thing was like ridiculous. It would just shoot you up in the air, and then you make like 3 different jumps, I think, before crashing back to the ground. Overall, I'm not like a huge fan of the item, but I think it was cool while it was in the game. That's gonna be another decent tier item for me. It's just not exceptionally good or exceptionally bad. It's just kind of a mid-range item. Like it was cool, but it wasn't insanely useful and it was kind of annoying. Next up, we've got the Ship in a Bottle, which is a collab item from the Pirates of the Caribbean crossover. It's pretty cool. It's like low-key insane. Like it's really confusing when someone pops this in a fight because it just all goes to hell and no one knows what's going on. But I think it's a super funny and super unique item. There's just so many memes to be done with this thing. We did that whole video like joking about that's the best pirate I've ever seen, and that thing was just a super big highlight. Like it's so funny, man. In terms of like usefulness, it's kind of not insanely useful because you can't really steer the ship once you pop it, and it only does like 50 damage and knocks people away, so the odds are they're not going to get hit more than like once. But I mean, it's just so stylish and it's so funny, and it's like, that's gotta be the best pirate I've ever seen. So I'm gonna chuck this one in the great tier. I think it's just a funny item. It's not insanely practical, but like, I love stuff like this. Fortnite should do stuff like this more often. And last, and certainly not least, we have the addition of Fortnite Reload, which is a unique game mode that is heavily OG inspired. It was sort of added halfway through the season as what we might call a damage control, to sort of give the people who didn't really know what to do with car season something to do during car season. Is it just nostalgia bait? Yes, most certainly it is just nostalgia bait, but it's still a pretty fun game mode. So I mean, there's only so much you can complain about with that. Like, it is definitely taking advantage of nostalgia and the Chapter 1 map and the Chapter 1 weapons. But if it's a fun game mode, then that shouldn't really matter. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that this is a great game mode. I'm really happy that it's been added to the game, and hopefully it sticks around. There's not really been much saying if this game mode is gonna leave, if it's a permanent thing. Like, they haven't actually come out and said that yet, I don't think. I would imagine it's going to be sticking around for quite a while, so hopefully it gets cool updates. Like, I've seen a lot of concepts for new maps where they could do like Chapter 2 versions, Chapter 3 versions, and I think that would be really cool. I'm excited to see what the future of Reload brings, and I think it's a really cool and unique game mode. This one's going into S tier. They did a huge W here, bringing it out during car season, giving those people who just could not play the game like something to do, and also giving all those Chapter 1 nostalgia baiters who think Chapter 1 is the best thing that has ever existed and will ever exist something to do. I guess that's cool. And that pretty much wraps up my ranking here. If you didn't notice, I put nothing in the bad tier throughout this entire tier list, which is the first time that has ever happened, and I think it kind of says a lot about the state of the loot pool. Everything is either like completely broken or just mid. Like, nothing is necessarily bad or unusable this season, which is honestly kind of a cool achievement. I suppose we're only talking about the new items though, so maybe stuff like the tactical assault rifle would kind of still fall in that category. This season was a hell of a roller coaster, and I'm still not really sure how to think about this final ranking. Like, ranking it out of 10, there's so many different aspects to consider. On launch, everything was so broken, and this season would probably be like a 4 out of 10 if they had never made any balance changes, because like, what the hell was the state of that at the beginning? Like, bruh. The fact that we were dropping 30 bombs in a car without like ever needing to leave the car, and it was easy. It wasn't even a challenge. What is that, bro? Like, that is literally worse than the mechs. The mechs were bad, but if you shot them enough, they would die, and you couldn't really heal them except for like 2 HP per second campfires back then. But here you had like the gas stations that healed you up, you had the repair boxes. Like, just the state of the season 3 launch was just a nightmare, man. Like, I never want to relive that ever again. When we made that first season 3 video, I cut out about a lot of the games where we just kind of died to random BS, but like there was 2 hours in there where we were just screaming, like not knowing what was happening. Just, oh man, I'm getting PTSD from that season launch, man. Like I'm telling you. But by the end, it became really fun and honestly one of my favorite loopholes that they've ever had, with the heavy impact sniper, the towhook cannon, the combat AR, the fists, and still having the pump, the gatekeeper, the thunderburst SMG, and the deagle, and adding that mythic one too. There was just so many cool parts of this season, and it kind of sucks that it feels like the cars brought it down so much more than like it should have. Just think about this. If we didn't have any of this car nonsense, this season would be really good. The weapons are just super solid here. This loot pool is like one of the most fun and balanced I think we've had in a while, excluding stuff like the fists and the nitro splashes. I don't know, man. What a world it would have been without cars. But all that said, I think this season is somewhere in the middle, maybe like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. And I know that might seem generous to a lot of people, but I honestly had just a lot of fun with guns like the towhook cannon and the mythic deagle that I can't really rate it lower than a 5 out of 10. And the cars are still annoying, but there's enough counters in the game now to where it's not like the end of the world or something if a car pulls up. Like there is always the chance that you can destroy it, which was an impossibility on season launch. So I'm glad they fixed that. Let me know your thoughts on this season. I'm very interested to hear on this one. I know it's been one of the most divisive that we've had in a while. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. I make one of these for every single Fortnite season and a bunch of other cool videos too. But without further ado, I've been Blitzblock and peace out.